We're going to look at a couple of different mothers this morning who show up in Scripture. One has a name, and the other one had a name, but we're not told what it was. And I want to talk about those two because they are referred to as a mother in Israel. The title of our message this morning is A Mother in America. And we're going to look at the indispensable role of women in family and church and national life. I want to start with the story of Deborah. In Judges chapter 4 and 5, we are introduced to Deborah. We learn that she was a prophetess and that her husband's name was Lapidoth, and that she judged Israel sitting under the palm tree of Deborah. They even named a tree after her. Between Ramah and Bethel in the mountains of Ephraim. If that sounds familiar to you in your Bible reading through Samuel, it's the area where Samuel was a judge some decades later. We also learned that her ministry to Israel occurred during a time when God's people were, and the words are, harshly oppressed by a man named Jabin, who was king of the Canaanites and reigned in Hatzor. His army was under the command of Sisera, and Sisera had at his disposal 900 chariots of iron. Now, if you're thinking in terms of what that would be like in modern military, this would be a guy who had 900 fighter jets, and you don't have any. Or he had 900 top-of-the-line tanks, and you have nothing. That would be the kind of thing that they were facing. Deborah's story is unusual in that most of the judges of Israel were men. Gideon, Samson, we just mentioned Samuel. And the list could go on and on. In fact, it's even mentioned here that she was serving in a period of time, and then she mentions another judge, a male judge. Ancient Israel was a patriarchal society, so the account of a woman occupying a position of leadership and authority is rare, and that catches our attention. You probably know the story. She is judging Israel, and she calls for a man named Barak, a man from the tribe of Naphtali, and she calls for him at the command of the Lord. In other words, the Lord told her, I want you to call Barak. And she commissions him to lead Israel in a military uprising against these oppressing Canaanites and their 900 chariots of iron. Barak is understandably a little nervous about that. So he says, I will go to Deborah. I will go if you will go with me. Now he agrees. He leads the campaign. And Barak and his army of 10,000 routed the Sisera and his army of many more, along with the chariots, delivering Israel from these oppressors. And that's what you read in Judges chapter 4. And then in Judges chapter 5 is the song of Deborah, where she praises the Lord for what he has done. That chapter would be a sermon all by itself, but we don't have the time for that this morning. Suffice it to say, this is what verse 7 says. Village life ceased. It ceased in Israel until I, Deborah, arose a mother in Israel. We'll come back to that phrase in just a moment. There's another story, and it's in 2 Samuel chapter 20. And it starts with verse 14. I'm going to read that passage down to verse 22. And he went through all the tribes of Israel to Abel and Beth-Maachah and all the Berites, so they were gathered together, and also went after Sheba. The he is Sheba. And they came and besieged him, that they being, I'm starting in the middle of a story, sorry. The they is Joab and the army of Israel. besieged him in Abel of Beth-maachah, and they cast up a siege mound against the city, and it stood by the rampart. And all the people who were with Joab battered the wall to throw it down. Then a wise woman cried out from the city, "Here, here, please say to Joab, 'Come nearby that I may speak with you.' When he had come near to her, the woman said, 'Are you Joab?' He said, 'I am.' Then she said to him, 'Hear the words of your maidservant.' And he answered, 'I am listening.' So she spoke, saying, 'They used to talk in former times, saying, they shall surely seek guidance at Abel, and so they would end disputes. I am among the peaceable and faithful in Israel. You seek to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. Why would you swallow up the inheritance of the Lord?' And Joab answered and said, 'Far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy. That is not so, but a man from the mountains of Ephraim, Sheba, the son of Bichri by name, has raised his hand against the king, against David. Deliver him only, and I will depart from the city.' So the woman said to Joab, 'Watch.'" I'm sorry, it's Mother's Day, but I have to read it anyway. "His head will be delivered to you over the wall." Then the woman in her wisdom went to all the people, and they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri, and threw it out to Joab. Then he blew a trumpet, and they withdrew from the city, every man to his tent. So Joab returned to the king of Jerusalem. So in 2 Samuel, we meet another woman, but she is not named in the text. We don't have her name. She is simply called a wise woman, and she was from this town of Abel in Beth-maachah, a town known for its wise and judicious population. People would come to Abel to end disputes. They got counsel at Abel. She calls herself in verse 19 a peaceable and faithful person, one who is part of the inheritance of the Lord and a mother in Israel. And there's that phrase again. So what does it mean? When Deborah referred to herself as a mother in Israel, what did she mean? When this woman in Abel referred to herself as a mother in Israel, what did they mean? Is it a reference to the maternal role in a family? Is she a mom of children? Is it a political leadership comment? After all, Deborah was a judge. And the person who became the spokesperson for the town of Abel was this wise woman. Is it speaking about wisdom? Quite obviously. So I don't think it's either or. I think it's all three. Both of these women were very likely, and I'm extrapolating here a little bit. Please understand that this text doesn't say, here are the names of their children. It doesn't say that. But they were very likely literal mothers, women with children, women whose sharpened maternal instincts overflowed to their families, their neighbors, their towns, and even their nation. So the role of a mother in her home was likely in play here. In addition, a prophet would sometimes be called a father, speaking of his role as a leader and as a mentor. In Job chapter 29, verse 16, we find out that Job was referred to with these kinds of words before he went through all of his trials and tribulations. Elisha, as Elijah is being taken away from him, calls him my father. And he wasn't the son of Elijah. He was speaking to him as a prophet. So the idea of referring to someone who was a prophet or someone who was a leader in the nation as a father was typical. These two women were leaders. And so for them to be called mother, obviously you wouldn't call them father, but for them to be called mother in their role, their gender role as leaders, I think is a very similar thought. They were advisors, they were motivators, they were protectors. They provided guidance when the men were either unable or unwilling to do it. Can I just stop for a second and say, that hasn't changed a lot over the years. There are more women in the average church than there are men. Women have a tendency to step up and lead when the men leave a vacuum. And so oftentimes we don't have the leadership from the males that we ought to have, spiritually speaking, and the women have to step in. They don't want to often, but they do. And I think that's what you find with Deborah. That's what you find with the wise woman of Abel. So Deborah and the wise woman of Abel used the term to denote that they were women operating in a man's role, in a man's world, filling a man's role. They were mothers in Israel. And finally, their leadership flowed from their wisdom. Deborah was a prophetess and a judge. All Israel, it says in Judges 4:5, all Israel came to her for judgment. So they recognized that this was a person that they could depend upon. Someone who could think things through and come up with a good answer. And the woman of Abel is called a wise woman. And as we recognize, we read the story, she becomes the spokesperson for this entire town. Her willingness to confront Joab and her advice to hand over the traitor saved the lives. Part of the reason I read that whole passage is I wanted you to see that the whole town was in danger of destruction. Saved the lives of everybody in that town. Mothers have played a long and important role in humankind. It includes those who have poured themselves into their children for good, who have made an impact in their children that is long-standing and positive. The story, however, also includes those who have neglected their children for ill, to their detriment. It even includes the stories of those who trained their children to be evil. So the story of mothers is not a one-size story that fits all. There are a variety of different kinds of moms through history, in the Bible and through history. The story includes Hannah on the one hand, Samuel's mother, who prayed for him and then gave him to the Lord for all of his life. And it includes Jezebel on the other. What a wicked woman in every respect. It includes Deborah, the one we're talking about. And then if you were to read on in this poem, the story would also include the mother of Sisera, a woman who was wicked. And I won't go into the details here in the poem, but she's wicked, and it makes it obvious in the poem that she is. It includes Sarah, Abraham's wife, who became the mother of Israel. And it includes Lot's wife. We don't know her name. But a woman whose influence on her daughters became very obviously negative. For good and sometimes for ill, mothers have had an amazing impact on the next generation. In fact, in many respects, the story of mothers is the story of how one generation either enriches or impoverishes the next. So this morning I want to take off on that idea of a mother in Israel, with all that it means, and apply it to the role moms and women play in our country and in our era. Deborah and this wise woman from Abel were mothers in Israel, and I believe we have mothers in America in the same sense, sitting here in this room this morning. So let's take a look together at what that means. The first thought has to do with the role of maternal care. What we normally think of when we think of the word mother, children at home. One of the most challenging tasks a woman can take on is the job of of rearing her children. Hopefully you don't call your child felony. In that role, a mom is a teacher. She's a housekeeper, and we'll get to that in just a minute. And she's a nurse. She's a journalist. You say, journalist? Yeah, she keeps tabs on what's going on with her kids. She's a photographer. One of the blessings that we have in the area in which we live as grandparents is that we have kids who have cameras on their phones. And they take pictures and videos, and they send them to us. We got the cutest picture this morning. Can I brag on my granddaughter? Is that all right? This isn't in the notes. This is for free. We get this picture this morning, and it's a picture of Evelyn, and she is standing there with a tray, and on the tray are a couple of oranges and a bowl of something, I don't know. Pardon? Yogurt, a bowl of yogurt. And underneath that is a picture that she has drawn and colored herself. She got up early this morning. Her daddy is at the church practicing and getting ready for the service, so he's not there to help her with this. She did this by herself. And she is serving her mama on Mother's Day breakfast in bed. I'm going to tell her that I told that story and everybody went, oh. That's great. And the reason we know that's the case is because Mama took a picture. So a photographer, if you want to see the picture, Jane's got it on her phone. You can see it later. She's a secretary. She's a party planner. She's a hostess. She's a chef. She's a personal shopper. She's a taxi driver and a stylist. She's a counselor, an advisor in spiritual and material matters. And as a mother, she has a job of preparing her brood, whether that brood is 1 chick or 10. Preparing her brood for life outside the nest. From the day she gives birth, she is literally working herself out of a job. And when she does, she'll cry. When Jan and I dropped our oldest off at college, we could not speak to each other for 3 hours on the trip home. Because every time we'd just start to cry. It wasn't me, it was Jan. She gives her heart and she pours everything she's got into her kids, knowing that they will one day soon be adults who will leave home, who will walk out the door and leave her behind to start their own lives, which is the way it's supposed to be. A lot rides on her shoulders. The day-to-day responsibilities of mothering and the long-term end goal of life preparation. It's been said that most of what we know, we have learned by age 5. Isn't that amazing? That's when you start going to school. But most of what you know, you've already learned. Studies show that the years between ages 2 and 7, so a little bit farther, ages 2 and 7 are critical to brain development. And the children at that age learn faster than at any other time in their lives. Quote from the article, therefore, children's experiences in this phase have lasting effects on their development. That's the end of the quote. And guess who generally provides the most input during those years? Sorry, guys, it's mom. Now, part of that input is providing a refuge that we call home. The outside world can be a scary and intimidating and even a dangerous place for kids. Home should be a refuge from that and more. The place where a child grows up has a lasting impact on how that child develops. I have memories of West Chicago Boulevard in Detroit. The place is a war zone now. I don't mean literally, but I mean there aren't any buildings standing anymore. But I grew up on that street. And another one, I'm going to say Whittemore because it's not Whittemore, but that's what's coming to mind. Another street in Detroit, and Ellis Street in Stevens Point, and Grove Road in Ypsilanti. And I have memories of growing up in those places. Memories that have shaped me. Memories that have made a difference in my life. Experiences that have changed the way I've thought and acted over the years. And my mom was a big part of what made those memories and shaped those memories. Some of those memories are good, and others, well, let's just say I could have done better. Is your home, Mom, a place of unconditional love and acceptance? I don't mean that you say whatever you do is fine and I don't care whether you sin. Not that. But unconditional love. Whatever you do, I still love you. And you're my child. Is the home a place of safety and nourishment? Nourishment physically, emotionally and spiritually? Is the home a place where behavior is shaped and molded? A home is a place where boys learn to be men and girls learn to be women. Yeah, there's laundry and meals and bedtime rituals and special events, but there's much more to making a home than simply dishes and vacuuming. A mom makes the home. You've heard the phrase, a woman's home is her castle, and that's the thought behind that. The atmosphere in which a kid grows up, the home, is largely shaped by the woman who keeps it and makes it home. One of the interesting things about early childhood development is the connection between parental care and proper development of a child. Experts tell us that infants and toddlers offer invitations to connect. Those invitations are things like cooing, smiling, crying. That's an invitation we don't usually want, but it comes. And when loving parents respond to those invitations, kids thrive. When neglectful parents don't respond to those invitations, the kids struggle. Once again, mom is the one who connects most often with the children. Even if she's a working mom, she'll often connect more with the kids than her husband, no matter how loving he may be. Kids want to know that they're loved. They want to know when they fall down and bruise their knee or split their lip that there's going to be someone there to pick them up and help them through that. They want to know that there are boundaries. Did you realize that kids want boundaries? They're going to tell you they don't, but they want them. Because the boundaries tell them, here's where it's safe. And outside of these boundaries, it's not safe. And inside these boundaries, you can learn to be the person God made you to be. It's a safe place for them to grow and develop. Kids need to know that mom cares. So a mother in America needs to give herself to the role of mother. The maternal responsibility to care for her children. She may not be able to shape the culture at large, but she has a tremendous impact on the part of the culture that grows up in her home. The second idea connects with leadership. Every mother is a leader. Most moms don't think of themselves that way, but every mother is a leader. She may not be a CEO or a congresswoman, but God has placed her in a position of leadership with respect to her children, and maybe more. That was certainly true of the two women that we've considered briefly this morning. Both Deborah and this woman from Abel were leaders, even beyond the confines of their homes. So ladies, you are leaders. Unhappily, our culture has downplayed the role of leadership in the home for women. It is said that women cannot be fulfilled unless they step outside the home and become leaders. But nothing could be further from the truth. I like this quote that's up on the screen. You may have a hard time reading it. It just says, there is no greater name for a leader than mother or father. There is no leadership more important than parenthood. And I don't know this woman. I can't even read her name to tell you what it is. I've read it earlier, but I can't remember it or can't read it. But that's a great quote. Sherry L. Dew. Thank you. Both of the women we have considered provided direction. God pointed the way, and they pointed that out to those in their circle of influence. They lived at different times, and they lived in different places, and they lived under different circumstances, but they were able to give direction to the people who depended upon them. Ladies, you also live in different times, and in a different place, and under different circumstances, but God has given you a circle of influence. There are people that you know, people who depend upon you, people who appreciate you, people who who think very highly of you and would appreciate knowing what you have to say. And they have an opportunity to learn from you as you learn from God and His Word. And with what you've learned, you can provide direction. Every mom provides direction. And again, some moms point in a good direction and some moms point in a direction that is not good. The nature and value of the direction you provide is going to be directly proportional to your connection to the Word of God. Moms, are you encouraging your children to walk with God and live for the Lord? It's an important question. Let me ask you another one. Are you encouraging them to consider serving the Lord with their lives? I stood right here and had a conversation with a mom. Right? Just down behind the piano here in that little spot. A conversation with a mom who said, I will never encourage my children to go to Bible college. Because if they go to Bible college, they'll end up in some area of ministry and they can't make a living or enjoy life if they're in the ministry. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm in a ministry. Do I look like I'm starving? You be quiet. I heard another no out here as well. I'll have a conversation with you guys afterwards. God is taking care of us in the ministry. I'm not going to be out as a CEO buying an island for myself. That's not happening. But God has taken care of us, even when the circumstances around us didn't. And so when I hear a mom say, I'll never encourage my kids to go to Bible college, I'll never encourage my kids to go into ministry, breaks my heart. If God's not going to use His church and His people to put people in ministry, then He's not going to do it from anywhere. A mom needs to say, I want my kids to serve the Lord. Whether that service to the Lord is as a dentist, or as a plumber, or as an accountant, or as a pastor, or as a missionary. I don't care what the area of service is, and I don't care whether the kid goes overseas. I hear parents say, I don't want them to become a missionary. They'll go overseas and I'll never see my grandchildren again. Well, if they choose to do something that is outside of God's will, you might see your grandchildren again, but you may not like what you see. Encourage your children to serve the Lord. It's an important aspect of being a mom. More than many moms know, the things that they say will have a huge impact on the direction their children take in life. Both of the women that we have considered also faced conflict and resolved that conflict. In Deborah's case, the resolution involved facing adversity head on, in spite of the fact that it seemed overwhelming. In the case of the woman of Abel, it involved determining the nature of the problem. Why are you attacking our town? Here's the nature of the problem. Okay, I think I can come up with a solution for that. Might have been kind of gory, but it was a solution. Conflict is part of life. It's a part of home life. It's a part of work life. It's a part of neighborhood life. I'm speaking from experience. We have had conflicts in our home. We've had conflicts at work. We've had conflicts in our neighborhood. We've had conflicts in church. It's not that we won't go looking for conflicts, but they come up. Most of us don't like conflict. I know some people thrive on it, but most of us don't like it. We would prefer not to have conflict. And it often presents some very difficult challenges, but it is a part of life. Every mom who has more than one child knows all about this because kids fight. Now, I didn't fight with my sisters. My sisters fought with me, but I didn't fight with them. Just wanted you to know that. But one kid will have what the other kid wants. Right? I want that toy, but it's mine. Well, too bad. I want it. Well, yeah, but if you take it, then I won't have it. And before very long, you've got a battle going on in the house. And you say to yourself, yeah, that's 2 and 3-year-olds. Yeah, and 12 and 13-year-olds and 22 and 23-year-olds, and keeps going on. One will win the game and the other will lose and get mad. One will have the seat next to grandma, and the other one will cry because he has to sit next to grandpa. And just because they get older, the conflicts don't necessarily stop. The role of maternal leadership is vital in the home. And it often spills into other areas of life because moms oftentimes learn lessons in the home that they can take out into other areas of life. Many women have excelled in this role of providing direction and resolving conflict. And we need mothers in America who can provide this kind of leadership inside and outside the home. Our third concept relates to wisdom, the ability to apply knowledge to life. That's what wisdom is. It's the ability to apply knowledge to life. And again, both of our mothers in Israel examples were wise women and put that wisdom to good use outside the home. I suspect that both learned to apply wise counsel in their own home lives before they ever stepped outside. Often, home is the proving ground for later success. But in the stories we've considered, both women applied wisdom to life and death challenges, literally life and death challenges, outside of their respective homes. Deborah's people were in danger of being wiped out by the marauding Canaanites. I almost said Canadians. Sorry for those of you who are Canadians, but it didn't come out until I admitted it. The town of Abel was in the same kind of danger at the hands of Joab and the armies of Israel. Deborah, a woman highly respected by God's people, recruited a military leader to lead her nation to victory. The wise woman of Abel found out why Joab was attacking, recognized that she and her townspeople could resolve the problem, and convinced them to take the necessary steps. You're thinking to yourself, where were the city fathers? They weren't there, but there was a city mother. Both women applied knowledge to real-life situations, and the results were life-saving. Providing wise counsel is something that godly women can do. She can provide wise counsel to her husband. In the Christian home, the man has the responsibility before God to lead. But he is a fool who does not seek the counsel of the woman God placed into his life. That may be too strong for some of you. But God help you if you're not seeking the counsel of your wife. God put you together as a team. You ought to be thinking as a team, working as a team. And a team counsels. My wife's counsel has saved us from numerous potentially disastrous outcomes. And on some occasions when I have said, I don't want your counsel, we've experienced some disastrous outcomes. Not life-ending, but I can think of a few that could have gone much better if I'd have just listened. Most men will be able to testify the same thing. So she can provide counsel to her husband. She can provide counsel to her offspring. As time goes by with children, it changes from command to counsel. And you start thinking with your children about what their future is and how they're going to handle things and all those kinds of things as they grow older. They need someone to help them to see the path forward. Sometimes that's a daunting task for kids. I'll tell you what, when I was 17 years old, looking forward to it was exciting. I'm getting out of high school. I'm headed toward college. This is going to be exciting. I'm moving away from home. But what does the path forward hold? College. What after that? College. I mean, it was hard to think about where God was going to take me. But God gave me parents who had already walked down the path of life. I remember having conversations with my dad and my mom about what the future would hold. Sometimes they need a wise mom who gives them the tools to make their own decisions. Sometimes they need a mom to say, oh, wait, don't do that. And sometimes they need a mom to say, here's your choices. Make a choice, and then we'll see where we go from there. And when they fall on their face, you can be there to say, please don't say, I told you so. You can be there to say, you know what, I love you and I care about you. And I want the very best for you. And I'm going to do everything I can to help you through this. Kids need to fail. They need to. And sometimes one of the things that we do wrong as parents is we prevent them from failing. You cannot do that. I will not allow you to get an F on that paper. I'm going to do it for you. Well, maybe the best thing for them is to get an F on that paper. And then they can figure out, okay, the next time down the road, then I need to do a little better job. Sorry, I'm losing my... You know what's going in my pocket? She can also step outside the home and provide wise counsel to others. As a teacher, my wife was a teacher in church settings as well as in a school setting. As a friend, you just sit down at a coffee shop and talk with a friend of yours who has a need. Maybe as a couple, you do that with another couple. As a leader, God puts some moms in positions of influence in the lives of others, as He did with Deborah, as He did with this woman from Abel. When women are wise, they can have an impact far beyond the walls of home. So what do we take from this? God's Old Testament people had mothers in Israel, women who stepped up in the will of God and led. We need mothers in America who will step up and provide the kind of wise, godly, compassionate direction that we saw in our stories this morning. Women who will see the dire straits that we are in as a nation. And we are in dire straits. And who will apply godly wisdom to this situation. We need women of substance in local churches. Women who will teach children. Women who will teach women. Women who will be mentors to other women. Who will guide and counsel and resolve conflicts. Who will apply the lessons they have learned from the Word of God in their own home lives into the life of the church. And most importantly, we need women who will provide the kind of godly care, the kind of compassionate guidance, and the kind of wise counsel every Christian home needs, because it all starts in the home. Now, in case you have gathered from all this that I'm advocating for the overthrow of husbands and fathers, far from it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that husbands and fathers shouldn't be leaders. God put you in a position of leaders, dads and guys. But I am advocating for team ministry in the home, and team ministry in the church, and team ministry in the public square. All three need God's people, male and female, to step up. We need mothers in America today. Let's bow for prayer. Father, thank you for the stories in the Bible, because the stories teach us some things about what you value. You valued women who would step up and do the right thing in the right circumstance. Sometimes the man doesn't step up, or sometimes the man is morally flawed and won't step up. There are multiple stories. Think of Nabal and Abigail. Nabal was a worthless man. Abigail was a wise woman. Because of her stepping up, she saved the lives of every male in her household. So over and over we see that that's the case. And I just pray, Father, that you'll help the women who are here today, the ones who are in the sound of my voice, to recognize that God has given them a responsibility and an ability to carry it out. that they are in fact endued by God with the ability to be a mother in America. Thank you for our time together in your word. Encourage us and strengthen us to serve you faithfully because of it. In Jesus' name, amen.